Is this Mike from around the world?
Good evening, Pastor Paul. How do I sound?
You sound great.
Awesome.
Great. And of course, I'm in the Salvation Station here in Indiana, and I have a PA system in the corner which blows the sound at me, and just, man, you're loud. You're wall to wall, treetop tall.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Mike, we got a great crowd of folks here tonight, and I don't know. Did you get Heidi's email?
You know what, Pastor Paul? Honestly, I just sat down about an hour ago. I haven't checked the main systems, not yet.
Okay. Well, let me.
So throw it at me.
I'll throw it at you. Okay. Last Thursday night, as you and I were talking about the Comet 73P, and how there would be some debris, and we didn't know if it was going to be real big or little or whatever. And you predicted it'd be fair, but not. You said that's not what you want to worry about. It's what's coming in late June and beyond is what you need to focus on. Well, there were some of our good friends out there, some of the other YouTube personalities and speakers who heard that last Thursday, and last night began to broadcast their own shows about what you said. They said exactly, Paul Begley and Mike from the World, what they talked about. And they went and started contacting their sources to find out what this might mean in late June. And I don't know exactly what all they said. There was 2 or 3 different people, but it started a firestorm. It started some rumors, and people were like, look, we just need it. Maybe let's ask Mike, because our phone started ringing, Mike, this afternoon. Our phone rang, our emails that were coming in. So we thought, you know what? Let's find out. Now, Mike, you have told us that there would be meteor storms and that we should prepare ourselves. They're coming. But help us understand, are we encountering a little more? Is it going to get a little rocky? What's going on?
Well, first of all, I want to say that's awesome. People went out there and looked behind the information to get some of the details, right? To kind of educate themselves on what's happening. So that's a good thing.
Yes.
Here's why. Because I think that everybody's familiar with asteroid 2022 GU6, right?
Yes.
Okay, GU6 is about 60 meters to 150 meters average. That's about a 42 story building. Okay.
What?
It was in the month of April. There was nervousness. People were sweating in the month of April, all the way up to the month of April of this year. Now, here's why. This thing was calculated to come very close to the Earth. And how close was it going to be to the Earth? Enough that it would damage or actually come into our atmosphere. Okay.
Wow.
So you're looking at 0.08 AU. All right. Ooh. So to give you an example of that's real close, because it was in April, before April 26th. I mean, it was people sweating. They had all eyes pointed on this thing, and it was wobbling because it did not have a very straight path. Its orbital path wasn't right. The JPL modeling was not right. Nothing was right. And this thing was going to get very close. It was going to impact us. All of a sudden in April, there were 3 scientists that actually did some recalculations, right? After all the nervousness, after governments were informed. Yep. I mean, this thing was about to go severely haywire, and this was April, okay? But they downgraded that. And on April 26, 2022, it was downgraded. And because of inconsistent orbital data, it was downgraded. And now the story, I believe that people 0084 AU away from Earth, that's about 1.2 million kilometers away from the Earth. So that's 3.5 times, about 3.5 times the distance from the moon.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was due to inconsistent data. But here's the problem. Do you not know they're still shuffling over a lot of information concerning this object? Why? Because its path is not consistent. Its orbital data is all over the place. Not to mention, they know it was not a single event. It was not a single event track. That's very important. That means you had other objects following that same track in April, of which I don't think they're reporting anything about it.
No.
And I'll tell you something here. If they were nervous, And then all of a sudden in April, they begin to downgrade this because of the negative responses that were coming back from some of the inquiries that were coming back, some of the briefings that were set to go out to Congress and the president and so on and so forth. That made everybody very nervous that, you get 3 individuals after one night without using proper optics. They're going to recalculate the orbit, then tell everybody, oh, it's going to be okay. Right? Now, that's up to the individual to believe that or not. I'm just telling you that in most cases, that not only did this happen then, but also we've had other cases. For example, in 2022 EB5, right? Too small to be hazardous, but it was observed. And this was an impact event, right? These are marked impact events.
What?
And we've had some of those come into the atmosphere that were observed, right? But the detection of them is too late because of some type of internal scientific bureaucracy, right, about who's supposed to know what. Well, let me give you an idea of something. I know everybody looks for NEOs, which is a misleading name, by the way. But they have more than, you have thousands of objects on a track that they won't look at because they deem them, right, non-destructive for large light. But Tunguska would have been categorized in this.
Okay. Yeah.
Several that impacted in the atmosphere, some that hit the ocean, some that hit the water just a couple of days ago.
Yep.
They deem these as, non-hazardous to people. The problem is, keep telling people every single day, is somebody gets injured. Just about every other day gets injured by some debris that comes from the sky. And we're not talking about satellite debris or anything like that. No, we're talking about debris from our asteroid belt, from dislodged rocks and bodies that are inbound to us. And that number is increasing exponentially, it seems. So there are several objects in question right now, tonight. That could actually pose some severe issues. Now, they're working overtime to get this orbital data information consistent so they can actually, do briefs or no briefs, right? And, but either way, we have come into a time where there are too many tracks that are coming forward, right? There are clusters out there that you wouldn't believe, and to look at the actual infrared data would just blow your mind. You would say, how in the world are we not hit yet? How is this even possible? Then you have these gravitational anomalies outside of Earth, outside of our system, near Mars, that are actually changing the trajectory and path of most of these objects. Now, you're going to have the big ones. That's why I say don't worry about the big ones. Nobody should worry about the big ones because they can be easily seen, easily tracked. They're going to be observed in everything else. The small ones, the ones that are going to be, when they hit the atmosphere, they're still going to be the size of a school bus or something like that. Those are the ones that pose the greatest risk. Why? Because they can't be observed like the other ones do. They're going to skip. They pick up on data tracks, but all too often you have individuals on those tracks that deem them non-hazardous, right? And in 5 cases this year, they have been fatal. Just so you know, 5 cases this year, they've been fatal. So this number is going to continue to increase as we continue to enter parts of existence we've never been in. And that really takes somebody has a good illustration of our planet in space with a galaxy. People would then understand we're in a part of existence that we know nothing about, right? That we've not been in before. And it's a lot of trash in this part of existence, right? In this part of creation. And we're entering right into it. So that makes this entire month very uncertain, and the months after very uncertain. There is no break between these months. It's going to be these are going to be months of uncertainty. I'll go ahead and forecast it. We're going to see some damage from multiple objects from this day forward. We'll see multiple damage. Now, as far as timing and everything else, it's not going to help anybody to know exactly when, right? That's why I'm saying from this day forward. It really isn't going to help anybody to know exactly when. Plus, if anybody were to ever give a date exactly when, that person would never speak to anybody on the internet again. That wouldn't happen.
Right, that would never happen. No.
So that would also be irresponsible because if I were to ever give a date, I would have to be very detailed in the information. And accurate. Right? So that no one is misled to ending up in the wrong spot because you'll have death suits and everything else. Anyway, but we're very volatile right now. It's only mercy that's keeping us from being hit. For example, Nobody said anything about tonight, right?
No.
I'll just give a hint. They
No.
will in about a week. They'll say something about tonight, right? Just to give you an example of what nobody knows about does not keep us out of danger. And we've gotten into this mindset of not a proactive but reactive response to just about everything, forgetting about several elements that is really going to bite us. It's kind of like what's going on in Congress with the current events that happen with them. They're looking in the wrong spots to find any solution. And
right.
We're doing the same thing with some of these rocks because people will observe large things coming through the atmosphere past Paul. Now watch this. They're going to see something the size of the size of possibly maybe a stadium go right over the earth, right? Kind of dip into the atmosphere and go right back out. It's going to scare people to pieces. Then they'll see more, but it won't do anything. But what's really going to get them are the small ones.
Yeah.
It's not the big ones. The small ones are the ones that they're like bullets. They're flying all over the place in space right now. Mars has taken some pretty hefty blows. You have the inner planets, same thing, and you have Jupiter. They're just, for some reason, some of these objects are well outside the gravitational pull of Jupiter, so it does not affect it, right? Doesn't affect it too well. So,
let me ask you this question. So I understand a little more clearly, and I think hopefully our viewers are also understand it. They can't tell you about every potential small rock that's coming because if it's not deemed destructive enough or a serious, they just don't even record it. It just let it. If it hits, it hits. It's going to bounce. Hit the ocean. It won't do a whole lot of damage anyway. And a lot of that you're saying is happening. But you're saying now that there are bigger pieces but not maybe gigantic, but big enough that they can do some damage. They can do some serious damage if they hit. And we're getting more and more and more and more of those as we go into this galactical belt of meteor, and that's why you're saying the meteor showers will not end. And so this late June thing you said is you just know we're going to hit a whole lot more dense debris field, which could be potentially dangerous. From this day forward, multiple damage is going to start happening. And if there is a bigger one that is a really a deep impact issue, we're not going to get to know that day or that hour or that moment because it would be irresponsible to put that out there and create this massive panic if you don't have the numbers exactly right. And what I'm hearing you say, they can't always get the numbers exactly right. Let me ask you a question. Is that because behind the sun? I had a guy at my home this week who said, and this guy is as pure as the wind-driven snow. He would not lie, believe me. And he said to me, Pastor Paul, he said there was a night that he saw at a sunset, the sun was setting and the clouds were kind of blocking the sun, but not, blocked the sun, but you could see the rays of the sun behind it. And just to the right at about 2:00, he said, I saw a planet. I mean, I'm telling you, I saw a planet. I'm not joking. And he said, the thing is, I thought, well, maybe that's the moon. But then he said, I went and researched, and the moon and the sun can't appear in the sky at the same time, really like that. I mean, you have what's called eclipses, but not like a planet sitting back behind the sun. So he said to me, do you think I might have just got a glimpse? Because see, if the sun's too bright, you can't see what's just around its edges.
That's right.
It
will obscure objects behind it.
Did he see Nibiru? Do you think he might have seen Nibiru?
What people are calling
Nibiru.
Nibiru, or whatever they call it. I believe there's an object behind our sun right now. I believe that if more and more people were to look very carefully at certain parts of the day, it has to be because it has motion to it, an unusual motion, right? I think it's more of a satellite, not so much the main object, but more like a satellite, something that has settled itself. But
you
see,
say
this,
when
this
you say
opens up.
satellite now, so that the viewers, you're not talking about a mechanical satellite. You're talking about a satellite rock.
Yeah, satellite, like a moon or some stray.
Okay.
But it is, it is round, and it does have influence, which is why we're going to have issues with Mercury very soon. But lots of people are seeing that. Here's the problem, though. For the last 2 years, there have been, especially from the Arctic region, there have been some optical observations that just, it doesn't make sense. I'll tell you something too. If any object with any mass to it, great mass, we're behind the sun right now, it would likely tear up our Earth. Okay, we're in a very, we're in a position in our solar system that just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. It's being maintained somehow. It's being maintained. We all know how, but it's being maintained somehow. These small disturbances and these pulls and these perturbations in other planets that they're starting to observe, and some of the fixes to some of the spacecraft as far as they're orbiting and GPS systems, so on and so forth, they're having to adjust for gravitational anomalies. So something of mass is out there. It just cannot be accurately observed because a mass could be a little bit more than what people have thought. And light by itself is affected by what people call gravity. Okay, it's affected. It can bend, right? Like laser. A laser can bend, right?
Yeah.
Now, we have a lot of forces on this Earth right now that do a pretty good job of obscuring things that people shouldn't know about. They do a wonderful job at that. There are even, there are teams of people out there that prop up a certain type of view that we're supposed to have of the world. And they do this on a continuous basis.
Cloaking. We call it cloaking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but this object is positioned in such a perfect orbit, just like the Earth. It would almost be impossible for anyone to observe it unless, at the right time, the rim of the sun were to be somewhat blotted out by cloud cover, something like that. That its rays, right?
Yeah.
Something would absorb the red light of the sun, which is the shortest light and wavelength, which would then show any object behind the sun momentarily. But it would go away, and nobody could ever, get a camera, go out there and try and prove it. They couldn't do that, right? It's something that you would either catch or not catch, right? But it wouldn't be, it's not something that's going to be observed all the time. We will observe something that looks like a moon in the sky very soon. It's just going to look like a second moon. It's not going to be behind the sun, right? It'll be red and brown. It'll look like red and brown continents are on this thing. It'll look just like that. I'm not sure how they're going to explain that, but people will see it. And at that point, though, our Earth will have changed geologically in several ways.
Okay, tell me how. Tell us how.
We're headed into something. We're not coming out of anything. Conditions of the Earth are going to be extremely challenging. There are going to be a lot of weird things happening. For example, how many people know about the materials, a substance that used to be found in the Earth thousands of years ago that was almost anti-magnetic, right? It had very strange properties. It looks like a rock, but it's a type of metal. But it's not a known metal that we're used to, but it's indigenous to this planet. But it has, it repels gravitational fields, which means if it gets near anything with that magnetic potential, these field lines, it'll begin to float and then hit the ground and float. So it does weird things. They hop, they move sometimes. Well, if anybody has ever seen those, and some people, they may start to see those. And the reason why this upthrust of the land masses and magma, all this is pushing up older materials. It's starting to, by the way, that substance is made from a group of substances inside the Earth, pushed up, and it cools off and becomes what looks like a type of tannish, silverish rock. Okay. And it collects like a goo. It's not really hard, it's semi-hard, but certain rocks certainly do float around it. It's nothing magical, it's nothing like that. It's just magnetics. And this material happens to be in such a composition that it Whenever a magnetic field is introduced into this material, it reacts almost instantly with its own magnetic field, propelling itself from any magnetic field. So as geological conditions continue to change in the Earth, there are going to be spots of the Earth that really, push this stuff upward, and then people will start noticing things like that. Well, on a larger scale, let's say if it hit an area underneath LA or underneath Chicago or something like that, that will affect all vehicles. It will affect all electronics. It'll be very different. And there are, in Israel, the only place I ever found this was in Saudi Arabia and Israel. Some of the older writings contained materials of how to construct certain things where they would be very, very light, where they could actually, load this thing up with heavy stuff and just push it, and it'll go, right? They would carpet the floor with the type material, and it's kind of like our cranes, I guess you could say, but it would actually be off the ground just a little bit where they could transport heavy material without any problem.
Like hovering,
right?
like almost levitating?
Yeah, almost like that, but it's just magnetics. It's all it is. It's magnetics. It's kind of like us taking a superconductor, right? And putting it, after you have a superconductor, introduce negative 370 degrees and let it do its thing. It'll float. It'll float right across any surface. Doesn't matter what the load is on it, it's going to float. And so they have metals like this also from certain meteorites. There have been certain metals that have been introduced, and scientists are still intrigued by them. But as soon as you begin to introduce any type of heated material, right, the metal breaks down, it disintegrates, and it comes right back together again. Right? These are found in labs all over the place, especially in some of the American labs. The problem is they can't collect enough of it. So there you are. There's a lot of strange changes taking place.
Okay, so now that brings me to a thought. You said something, I don't know if you were talking about the antimatter, but let me ask you this question, because one of the things that folks are saying out there in their research, and I just want to maybe have you clarify it for us if this makes sense or not. They're saying that with some of these incoming asteroids and meteorites, that if they get too close, and as you say, if the governments of the world get involved and people are really starting to sweat bullets like they were in April, some are saying that the governments of the world who have this capability will pull out their antimatter guns. What is an antimatter gun, and does this have anything to do with it?
When you deal with chemistry, right?
Yeah.
If you have, for example, if you had radiation, right? Say we had a bomb went off somewhere, we had a lot of radiation. Well, there's hardly nothing that will mitigate radiation, right? But due to some experiments that took place back in the 60s, they found out that the introduction with colliders, of course, you can take out certain materials. Negative materials, I'm going to call them, because you have protons, antiprotons, electrons, anti-electrons, so on, antimatter. You can take some of that matter, right? And it's radioactive in its own realm, in its own place. But if you pull it into this realm of reality, in other words, you make one of these antiparticles operate around these positive particles, it mitigates the effect of its twin. So you could actually have I'm going to call it anti-radiation, which will absorb all radiation. Now, here's the problem with that. They had this down pat, but here's the issue. Yes, it'll absorb radiation or radioactive fallout, but it will also absorb the charge from any battery, about, I think it was 400 miles in radius. It will also take out the radiation necessary to keep our brains working and everything else. So they never were able to quite control what it absorbs. And that, they may have now. I haven't looked into that for a long time, but they may have now. But back in the back then, they absolutely tried all these things without the oversight they have now.
Is that part of why CERN is the experiments of colliding at the speed of light protons to create some exotic material?
They want to know all of it, because if they can isolate the materials, right? If they can actually isolate, analyze the materials, and get their properties, so to speak, they can develop containment for those specific elements, right? like muons and all these forces and all that. You can make a container to put these things in, but you have to analyze it first to find out all the properties in its indigenous environment and then in this environment also. So once you find out all those properties, you can contain it. It's just like the collider itself. They had to find out what these charges, like helium, for example, what properties surrounded helium to go ahead and make the containment field where they can actually utilize helium to launch at super high speeds, but keep it on one track. So those superconducting, those super magnetic, devices they had to be specifically made to affect certain types of gases or the elements within those gases to keep them on a track so they can actually collide them. And if you think about it, to collide one tiny little atom to another is crazy, right? How do you do that?
I don't know.
They're so tiny and so small.
Okay.
But you can do that. And so with those containment magnets, they're very precise. They're very precise.
So this is a dangerous game.
They need it.
This is a dangerous game. But I understand why. We made the atom bomb, and we got Einstein and everybody involved. Now we're at another whole level, and when we're talking collision of protons and the ability to create antimatter and what have you, but we are a lot more dangerous, explosive situation. And matter of fact, this happened yesterday when the news broke that the United States was sending over some new missiles that have a 50-mile range, and we're giving them to the Ukrainians. The Russians got very furious about this, and Russia threatens to wipe out the entire United States with just 4 Satan II missiles. Each one of these missiles, the Satan II, have 15 nuclear warheads on them, and each warhead is more potent or more explosive than the atom bomb, the one atom bomb we dropped on Hiroshima. So, Mike, are you saying that when we talk about splitting atoms, are these guys, have we got to a point to where we have this capability to just what is the capability? How does 4 missiles could wipe out America? Tell me, how can that be? What is it?
RS-28 Sarmat, right?
Yes.
I believe
yes.
NATO calls it the SSX-30 Satan II missile.
Yes.
Right? I believe
yes.
it was developed in 2009. Russia has it. It has a yield of 8 megatons of TNT. Right? That's 400 times as strong as a bomb that was dropped in Japan in 1945, of which 150,000 people died, or casualties. So
right.
The thing about this is a MIRV missile. Okay, what Russia has is a MIRV missile. And what MIRV is a multiple, independently targetable re-entry vehicle, which means it can carry 10, 12 warheads inside, but each warhead can have a different target. All right, so what a MIRV is. And so each MIRV can cause some severe damage. Each MIRV can cause a lot of damage. And by the way, the speed of a MIRV, once it launches its internal warheads, specifically talking about the RS-28 Sarmat, is about 15 to 20,000 miles per hour per warhead.
Wow!
So you're talking about a speed where it's not going to get intercepted. And if you think about it, back in 1952, I believe it was, a calculation for a nuclear missile from Moscow hitting New York was 1,006 seconds. 1,006 seconds. That's how long it would take. So that's not a lot of seconds. That's not a lot of prep time.
No.
At 15,000 miles an hour, which is probably at the low end of the scale for this thing, how long could anybody prepare for that? Plus, it was bragged to be, you're looking at a nuclear-powered global cruise missile type platform. AI-controlled maneuvering, so it can bob and weave and go through things and all this other stuff, right? Just like ours. And Russia is the largest nuclear power on Earth right now, right?
Yep.
So you're looking at something that air defense is not really going to work for, which is why you have counter missiles for that. As soon as they tested this thing back in 2009, do you not know it was 2 or 3 days after that, we publicly tested our hypersonic missiles. We did that. That was in a type of display of retaliation against Russia's announcement. So And then we found out what they were doing for real. And no one should forget about what China did when they launched a vehicle around the Earth.
Yes, they did.
And in that object was an independent, or is it 2 or 3 independently launched projectiles coming out of a hypersonic missile. So that gives us about 4 minutes to prepare for a strike here. Who can prepare in 4 minutes? So when Russia's making threats like this, given Putin is what, 70 years old, 69,
yeah,
70 years old?
Yes.
So he's getting old. Putin has had quite a few falls in his history. He's messed up his back in his history. He had, he had some surgeries, and he had this, and he had that. And so this guy's getting old, but he does not like the fact that NATO does not listen.
No,
NATO
he doesn't.
will not listen.
No, they won't.
And so he's not going to listen to NATO. And if NATO gets in the way, I'm telling you right now, Putin's not going to save face to smile at the world. He's going to do exactly what he wants to do. If people cannot see right now that Putin is not playing with anybody, he's doing exactly what he set out to do. Obviously, he's got nothing to lose. They're attacking his family. They're attacking his children and his wife. The wrong move. They should have kept them out of it. They're trying to make them go broke. They're separating his family also. So you have all these backdoor things that are happening that are quite heavy on Putin. They're provoking him.
Yeah,
they're just
you're
provoking
poking the
him.
bear. You're poking the bear to try to get him. I hope to God they're not trying to do this, but it's like they're poking him to the point that he might do something, small nuke, something. I don't think that would be a very smart strategy.
That wouldn't be wise. Because if one nuclear weapon goes off, we're going to have to deal with fallout for years to come.
Yeah,
it's going
we
to
don't
affect
want
everybody,
this.
and everybody knows this, right? Everybody knows that. But Russia stands a better chance to survive because of their climate and because of the jet stream. We do not. We get everybody's garbage. We do, America. So we know that if a nuclear war starts, we're going to get all the garbage. Not anybody else. It's going to be us, right? We're going to get all the radiation in the northern hemisphere. I had a prediction a long time ago that the northern hemisphere was soon to be uninhabitable by chemical biological war, right? Not so much nuclear, but chemical biological. I do believe, given the slackness of security in several different places, that the Western nations are in danger right now of a new type terrorist. I do believe that.
A new what? A what? A what?
A new type terrorist.
What is that?
Well, that's an individual you can't really identify, because we have something very bad happening over all the democratic countries. We have something bad happening for the West, period. We have a breakdown in trust of governments. This is the 17th year that people did not trust the government. 17 years ago, they almost trusted the government again, but now it's all out the window. To be blunt with you, that's one of the reasons why no plan. Everybody knows that whatever they're trying to dream up to stop all the shootings, right, Pastor Paul? But here's what they don't realize. If people are paranoid of their government, that's only going to cause people to do the exact same things over and over again. And in each case, some of this violence correlates to governmental trust. And so the more people see the government being dysfunctional, right, the people are going to have no resolve and no trust for that place. They're going to take matters into their own hands, which is exactly what's happening. And they're missing the whole point. Taking away guns is not going to fix it. They have to incentivize communities to take care of community people. Need to take care of community people, and that is the believer's job, right? We're the seeds planted in this world to stop what Satan is doing, and what Satan is doing is causing people to divide against one another. So nobody talks. Nobody knows the condition of their neighbor, because they don't want to encroach in their neighbor's world, because they got enough problems of their own. But a Christian is put there to mend these things, to put more morals back into the plan. This is not a government fix. They can take away all the guns in the world. I promise you, it's not going to stop guns. It's not. They're just going to make some another way. So that's not the issue. The issue is the people. It's a people problem. It's a community problem. It's a family problem. It's what it is. And so communities have to handle this. This is a problem that the people have to fix. The government cannot touch this. Anything they do is going to exacerbate the issue. It's just going to make it worse. And that's been proven over and over and over again. But of course, they're not listening to each other. They're fighting, right? So at some point, people are going to have to take this problem into their own hands, community-based, and handle this issue. They can do it. I'm telling you, they can do it, because is that what, in the 60s, all this stuff started in the first place? And it really took off in the early 90s. But that's because the family unit fell apart.
Yep. All right, Mike. Now, having talked about these things, we also got to touch about the fact gasoline just hit $4.71 a gallon across the nation. OPEC has said, well, you know what, we're going to start producing more. We've been getting pressured from the United States to produce.
Oh boy!
Why don't we just produce more in Texas? Why don't we?
Here's you want to hear this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, it was. Let's see, what month was that? March. In March, the announcement came forward: unlock the wells in Texas. Right? That was the order that came forward. I said, okay, well, it's going to take us 6 months. 6 months.
6 months.
To get them pumping again. Well, what are you talking about, 6 months?
Why?
They have to prepare. They have to do this. They have to do that. And all this stuff to unlock the oil. But see, here's the issue with that. Didn't Trump do that in a week?
Yeah, in 1 week.
Didn't he
These
do that
guys
in a week?
just
He
go
did
out
it.
and turn the thing on.
In 1 week he did it.
1 week.
But all of a sudden it's going to take us months. Something is wrong there.
No.
Something is very wrong with that, right? That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. And so here we are with the high. You know what? It reminds me of a portion of that dream, Pastor Paul. In part of that dream, let me tell you what I saw.
Okay.
I was walking down a street and the grass was up to my head. It was up to my head, but the street lights were on, right?
Okay.
And there was nobody outside at night. Something happened to the fuel. Cars had been sitting, the grass grew over the cars. So obviously, people were not driving their cars. Something happened to the fuel. And you know, on COT, I've been saying that for 15 years. I don't know what it was. Something happened to the fuel. Something happened. Nobody could cut their grass. It wasn't good, but something happened to the fuel. But we still had lights. We still had electricity, but we just didn't, something happened to the fuel.
Maybe it was man made the decision we weren't going to use fuel no more, or maybe we did something that, who knows?
I know one point, Pastor Paul, not to scare anybody, but here's the problem we face. We have this issue in the Ukraine, right?
Yep, we do.
Trump unlocked everything in about a week. President Trump did.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we can't do it now.
For 6 months.
If you put that together, we have an issue in the Ukraine, and we have nuclear jargon being flown around.
Right.
If any missile were to hit Texas, any missile, any of these new type missiles, due to the fragmentation and disbursement of heat that these things have, it could really ignite Texas from the bottom up. And that would be a very bad issue. That'd be a bad issue. And so it could be that they are reluctant to do this because they're unsure about Russia's true intentions.
Wow. Okay, just throwing that scenario out there. In other words, Houston, we got a problem. If they were to hit the Houston area where the oil is, it could ignite or fragment. It could run and heat up. I mean, you're talking about an oil explosion, right?
Yes. And once it catches,
it's
right,
gone. It's gone.
It's going to just take off. And we're not using the weapons we used to have. We have weapons that go deep into the earth and then explode. And this is a big difference. That technology did not exist 30 years ago. It didn't exist. Now we have missiles that can actually pound their way into the earth, right? Let out a smaller projectile and then explode. That's exactly where our storage tanks are, right? So it's just not a good, and they might be unsure of the true intent, right, of Russia, period. They might be unsure. And if this is the case, then look around the world and see who else is not unlocking their oil. That's all you have to do. And if you find that to be of the NATO countries, then they're frightened of a true strike from Russia. And I'm not talking about rumor. I'm talking about the real deal. There could be some type of strike, and that's why they're reluctant on doing this.
Wow, that's big that's big information. That's news breaking information right there. That could potentially be part of the problem, and that's a game changer if that's the case. Folks, Mike from Around the World's with us tonight, of course, and he has dropped several bombs on me. I'm still recuperating. This moon red brown type object soon to be visible, and basically, Mike, you're saying that nobody's going to be able to explain it away at some point here. Also, do you expect that means that our climate will be doing some absolutely crazy things if by the time that we see this? What do you anticipate the timing on this when you say the word soon? And what do you think? Are we talking pole shifting here a little? What do you see happening? Earthquakes breaking out more, volcanoes erupting? What's the ramifications of this thing?
I'm gonna say this. In the earth, through deep core drilling, they have found so many things, Pastor Paul. Number one, the earth has changed its rotation. The rotation that we have now is not the natural rotation, right? Okay. So being the nosy individual I am, I had to go find out and say, well, wait a minute, historically, did anybody else have this issue? I'm not going to say the full thing here, but let's just say something.
Okay.
In historical text, I'm not going to say which one. In historical text, a description of the sun was given, but it was a known fact that was opposite to what we have now. It was a known fact. I'm not going to say it out loud because then it would take details and that would open up a big can of worms. But let's just say that east and west was not always the east and west we understand today. And at some point, the earth is going to return back to its other rotation, right? Here's our deal. For a long time, we have been in a place in this universe without a specific influence. That influence is coming back. And with the deep core drilling, you can always tell the poles of any magnetic material. It has switched multiple times. And each time it switched, it correlated with the destruction of most kingdoms. Okay? So and then there are signs leading up in the geo record, right, to where all these magnetic fields of north and south did reverse. And so guess what? Some of the indications that were back in the past on a consistent basis, right, they're happening again. We're talking about oxygenation of the soil content, radiation that has been absorbed in the soils and plant life and living material. Right. All of it's very consistent. And it's saying this, that we are due for a reversal of the Earth's rotation. We're due for it. The radiation count is about to come up to the level of where it was right before the last time, right? The water conditions, salinity and chemical balance of the water is changing, just like what they found in most of the core drills, because there's a plane. When you do a deep core drill and you see a layer of gray, right, 10 times, and dirt is packed on top of that, and then another layer of gray, you analyze that layer of gray. This is your event. Whatever happened is in that event. The same thing happened in all of those events. Right below that event is a white layer, and in that white layer, something else happened, and it dealt with the sun. The radiation of the sun was incredible. Right before this happened, every single time, it was incredible, drying most things out. Right? And it worked up. That means the sun was cool, or the temperatures were cool, and then they heated up. And then all of a sudden this reversal happened, which was normally followed by a lot of ice, all over the place, so on and so forth. But we're back to the area where the radiation comes into the surface of the earth, because the soils are not as absorbent as they used to be. Right? They're not. So something is changing the chemistry of the soils, which if this is right, then the rainfall is not going to matter for farmers, because they're going to have a problem with their soils. Even if they're using the K1 soils, they're going to have a problem with the soils because of the radiation from the sun. It's most certainly different, right? The sun rays are different.
They are definitely.
It's very different.
Look at Mike. I don't know if you can see it in this. I'm looking on the camera. I think my face looks kind of red. Look, I'm in the cornfields of Indiana. It is June 2nd. So if you do have a sunshine in June, early June in Indiana, you're not going to get a sunburn in 90 minutes. You're just not. At least you didn't when I was younger. So I'm in the sun today. It's 77 degrees. It's partly cloudy. And I'm sitting out there I'm out there for 90 minutes, and now I have a red face. And I'm thinking, now wait a minute. Since when does Indiana sun get this hot? What's going on here? And so is this what you were saying is happening?
Absolutely. That's why people have tingling in their skin when they go out into the sun. In fact, nobody should go out into the sun unless they have proper SPF blockage, right? Because the radiation that your skin is absorbing is much higher than what it used to be, which means cancer rates are going to continue to go up, right? They're trying to hide cancer records in hospitals. They're told not to record all that stuff. They're told not to report this, that, and the other. People should have found this out during COVID-19. The numbers weren't right. That came out during certain trials. And people should have just put a note card by that and said, okay, hospitals are not giving the right numbers for the infected, which is important for anybody who gathers information because it tells what the sun is actually doing, right? If you have skin cancer going up by leaps and bounds, and you know something is wrong everywhere, right?
Right.
When you're in Russia and you've got skin cancer has gone up, not because bombs are being dropped, but because of sunlight, a very specific type of skin cancer. Because of the solar radiation, we have an issue. When you have solar cells, right? And the same exact solar cell that used to put out 13 volts is now putting out 28 volts, right? It's not a circuitry problem. You're looking at much more intense light, right? When you can take a UV panel and block some of the sun rays and the solar panels still put out that much power, okay, well, something has definitely changed. In fact, the sun has increased in its intensity about, I believe it was 2.8%. 2.8%, which is very important for anybody who works with photoelectric devices, right, or manufactures them, because they have to use light meters to actually get the electronics right. They have a very low tolerance in some cases. So we're in the middle of a progressive event right now that's going to increase to the point where it's not going to be very comfortable for anybody. And I believe this. I know that everybody has heard that prophecy about the 3 days of darkness, right?
Right.
Oh, but let me introduce something here, because now people can argue as to the origin of that prophecy. I'm not giving it full credence or anything like that, because it's not the King James. It was given by a person who, it could happen. But think of it this way. 3 days of darkness, the deal was a person could not let light come into their homes, right? Right? No light. They had to cover up all windows and everything. They couldn't answer the door. Right? Now, that was given by an individual. But what if that individual actually saw something, but it was not 3 days of darkness as we understand it, but a time when people could not allow sunlight to touch them?
Well, yeah, that's another whole way to look at it. And so you
if the sun rays were so intense that it would burn a person, right, just being in the sun. And we know this happens because in 2004, when that magnetar chopped off a piece of our atmosphere, some people were fried. They were killed, just like somebody turned on a microwave and killed them. They were killed with, each one was less than 2 or 3 minutes. They start cooking from the inside out. And they were in the Arctic, and that was off limits after that because there was no protection in the Arctic because that magnetar swiped off a piece of our atmosphere, right? And so if the sun has that potential right now, but the atmosphere protects us from that, what would happen if these meteorites that we're dealing with, start taking off chunks of our atmosphere, or one big enough comes and just influences some of our atmosphere out there, some of the materials in the atmosphere out there, and we have another hole, another gaping hole. Well, now, that's hard to understand because this stuff is gas, but a magnetar took a big part of the atmosphere away. The ozone was gone.
That might be why the Bible says this, and here's a prophecy. In Revelation chapter 16, there's 2 verses, verse 8 and 9. Revelation 16, 8 and 9, as you were saying that, Mike. It says, the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which had power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. So it sounds like the sun is affected by something. It could be part of our atmosphere gets tore away. These are like almost like microwavable waves of radiation or UV rays. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you have that microwave band that will be in fact, we would die without the parts of the atmosphere.
Right.
None of us. Even right now, right? If something happened to a part of our atmosphere and the sun decreased in its power 20%, right? But we didn't have an atmosphere.
We'd still
Anybody
cook
who
us.
went out in the elements, we would die within 1 minute.
Yeah.
1 minute, it would kill us, right?
Yeah.
So we're totally protected by the atmosphere.
Yeah.
By the atmosphere. And if that's gone, we're done for, right?
Right.
We're just done for.
So the concern, talking about that reversal for a second, the reversal of the poles. In other words, the Earth's rotation would reverse, and some of the ancient texts have made mention of that, and thus why you have these different things that they see. First, what I mean by that is they seen the constellations. What they document where the constellations were are not where they are today. And they,
Right.
How did they see the constellation from the angle they're in when, unless the Earth shifted and changed their view? Am I right, Mike?
Yeah, you could be. It could be why in Antarctica right now, right? There are security issues there, not over war or anything, but because of information of what can be observed
Okay.
for people who are stationed there, right?
Okay.
They cannot talk to anybody about what they see up there. And it could be because things are a little bit different than what, let's just say things are a little bit more controlled than people think. And we're not talking about man's control. Forget about that, Pastor Paul, because
Right.
Man is an infant, a baby. They can brag all day. I don't give people credit for things they
God
just
is
simply
way
can't
bigger
do.
than man, right?
And because the poles, if that were to be revealed, every person, you know what? More soldiers go to the Arctic and they start reading their Bibles. Do you know why? We're not talking about they don't start believing in aliens. No, they start reading their Bibles because they see the impossible. They just see the impossible.
Are you saying they see the impossible in space when they look up at the stars?
No, actually, no. They see the impossible. It's right there coming out of the ground.
What? Coming out of the ground?
It comes out of the ground. Yeah.
So, when you say more soldiers would read your Bibles, I know that there's been, you have access and you have communication with lots of soldiers. So you know the spiritual, you've got a good pulse on their spiritual condition, whether they're going through times of warfare, times of training, or exploring, or you know.
Yeah.
And so when you say more are reading their Bibles once they go down there, it's because of what they see. It's a game changer, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, you know what? Some people who are into UFOs, right? Everything is UFO. And man was created by aliens, right? Three of them went down there. 3 of them came back, and they no longer believe how they believe, but they came back praying. How about that? They quit with the idea of alien created man and all that stuff, but they came back praying. They came back praying because it messed the world up. It just messed them up.
Is that why all the leaders were going down there? I mean,
well, and if you notice, when they went down there, they were all of them were humbled. Did you notice that?
Yeah, nobody came back.
All of them
bragging.
were humbled.
Yeah, nobody.
All of them were. They were different when they came back because it really challenges everything people think they know. All these, some of the wild stories, this, that, and the other. Some could be true, some could be not, but it certainly makes you regard life itself and the earth itself, and you find out you've been totally wrong. It's almost like like Congress, right? One day they're going to find out they actually believed in their own policies. They're going to find that out. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't believe in their own results they wrote down on paper. Simply because it can be typed out doesn't mean it's going to work in the real world.
No.
And so a lot of people are finding that out. And I'll tell you, they saw a small piece of it. They saw a small example of something that everybody's going to see in time. But I'm telling you, it changed them forever. They're not going back to it. It messed them all up. Now, a lot of those same folks that went up there, they had an issue being loyal to governmental things or to Christ. Many of them went back to church. A lot of them went back to church are trying to find something, right? But most of the stories and things like that people have heard,
So it's,
a lot of them are constructed stories of speculation that have become fact
Right.
over the generations.
Right. So you're saying
And then
that-
when you see the truth, it's just you throw everything out of the window and you kind of fall to your knees.
So you're saying what the old saying we used to say, this they put the fear of God in them. Okay? And that's what you're saying. They literally picked up their Bible again. This put the fear
they
of
did.
God
Yeah,
in them.
yeah.
The
Yeah, it
realization.
messed them up pretty bad.
Yeah, messed them up. So I don't know what that could be. I mean, there's a lot of things it could be, but I tell you one thing, the Bible does tell us that God told us we're going to see some great signs and fearful sights, not only in the heavens, but we're going to see strange things here on earth. And, is this part of, you think, the end time revealing of the coming of Jesus?
Oh, you know what? I know it is. I know it is because simply knowing certain individuals that actually had eyes on, right? Knowing something like that, seeing it, they think about the earth differently. Nobody will ever see the earth the same way again. And you cannot, there are just certain things you can't believe in anymore. You'll say, well, that's what in the world? That's just not possible. And so with that, but here's the bad part. The bad part is, if it has to be proved to any of us, it's no longer by faith we believe. And so that's almost like that's not a good part. Eventually, everybody's going to see it. Right? Everybody will see it. I'll tell you right now, it has nothing to do with any life forms. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Nothing to do with life forms. Nothing to do with, and that makes it even more of an impactful thing. Nothing to do with any large craft. To be honest with you, they have seen Vimanas and all the stuff people have. They've already seen that.
Yeah.
They've already seen stuff that died in the earth and things that won't seem to die. They've seen that. It wasn't it.
It
wasn't
that.
it.
So we're not
this
talking
was something else. We're talking about something that changes the fundamentals of how people look at themselves, right? Because after seeing this, there's no excuse. And then you kind of feel, you just feel humbled, big time humbled by it, right? Just humbled. And so anyway, this, knowing that the earth is under this condition right now, it messed a lot of them up. They can no longer be loyal to these ideologies they once had. So it makes them or breaks them. It really does. Either they're going all the way rogue against it, or they're going to be folding. But in most cases, they were stuck in this type of confusion. And they didn't know anything after that point.
Folks, Mike around the world with us tonight. This is some very hard-hitting information. Of course, we've heard about Antarctica, that there's all kinds of rumors, and Mike is letting you know, no, it wasn't a spaceship they found. It wasn't. We've already found some of this kind of stuff. We already know that stuff.
They've seen it.
Yeah, we know about that stuff, and we'll have a webinar on August 26th called "Aliens and Fallen Angels." Okay, and we'll have different speakers. Mike's going to be one of the speakers, and he'll break some stuff out on that he can't say here on an open forum. But I'll say something right now. What you're saying, Mike, is a game changer. There's some things that God's revealing, and He has to reveal some stuff to bring. When the Bible says that it's not God's will that any should perish, but all come to repentance, He's got to do something drastic to get people to fall on their knees again.
Yep. Yeah.
And to really cry out to Him.
Yeah, that means everybody gets an honest opportunity
to
really understand and say, okay, yes, the Lord is Christ, but do I choose Him? Everybody gets that honest opportunity. And whatever it takes, obviously, is happening right now. But when that time passes, Pastor Paul, it's going to, and some of these people are so stubborn, they'll only change once they're about to face, part of the ultimate. But I'll say this, that many of the subjects and things that we've been talking about, they're about to be severely refined in the coming months, because if anybody can tell out there that people are running out, leadership is running out of things that they can do to stall people, to keep people in the same position. People no longer trust governmental things, is because they're maturing. A lot of people are maturing mentally, they're maturing spiritually, and they're looking for the next step, and they're not finding it in the world. They've called out and said, yeah, we need somebody better in the world, but that's not working for them. It's not working for anybody, right?
No.
We need that to govern others, yes. But as far as those people taking this additional step, they're spiritually maturing. Something else is happening that hasn't happened in a long time. And I would go so far as to say many Christians don't understand their own thirst, but they're getting thirsty. Not for more stories about E.T., not for, to go find Noah's Ark, not that either, but to know who Christ is, right? To get that closer relationship with Christ. There's a thirst out there, and they're looking for nothing but Christ. And so that lets me know, things are really going to speed up and change based on that. It's always based on us. Israel is God's land, his business, but it's also part of his clock, but we are too. How we believe, what we're willing to accept as a Messiah, we're part of that clock too, because he's not going to do anything where we're just totally messed up. Things have gone on for a long time so that we can be in our rightful positions to actually honestly and truthfully choose him in all things.
Amen.
So we're kind of that timepiece. But I'll tell you, Pastor Paul, that a lot of people right now, in the same breath, you have some out there that are totally rejecting.
Yep.
They know the truth. They know the truth, and they're saying no to it. They don't want it. They don't want it.
Amen.
And so, it's almost the first time I've seen that in the numbers I've seen it, which lets me know we're in a very different time. And space is going to tell the same story. Space is going to tell about prophecy. The earth is going to tell about prophecy. Like everybody's scared about this earthquake, the earthquakes in California. That's a very important thing to pay attention to.
Right.
It's been 322 years since the Cascadia gave in, right? Every other fault, we've had an earthquake. We had a major earthquake. And what are people doing? We haven't had one in Cascadia.
In
that
322 years.
Right?
And we haven't had one in the real big one like we did in the New Madrid fault line in 210 years. These are overdue.
Yeah. It's been, 1952, 9.0 Russia, right? It was 1960 Chile. I believe that was 9.5.
That was a big one, yeah.
1964 Alaska, 9.2. 2004 Indonesia, 9.1. Japan, 2011, that tsunami, that was a 9.0. So that's 322 or 22 years in the Cascadia subduction zone with a ghost forest, yet you have saltwater intrusion. You have gases that are starting to flow up from the ocean. You have anomalies in the ocean that are causing divers to have issues when they go down there and do what they normally do. You have cooked fish coming up on the coastlines, and people aren't paying attention. Chile and Peru and the Coast Plate, that's about to go. And when that goes, we're looking at an earthquake and plus underneath in Southern California, it is honeycombed under that land, right? It's a bunch of honeycombs under there.
It's so weak. It's like honey. Oh my Lord! It's ready to go.
It's riddled with tubes and with it looks like a honeycomb. If you take some type of spectro size, look at this thing. It looks like honeycombs are down there, and buildings are on top. And the land masses are actually starting to bend enough that you can actually measure them week by week. It's not year by year anymore. This is week by week. So there's massive movement under the earth, under the entirety of California. And both north and south, even parts of Canada, are in trouble. Because that Cascadia fault is 600 miles?
Yeah, it's huge.
600 miles. That's not good. That's Crescent City, Portland, Aberdeen, Seattle, all the way up to southern Canada. So when that goes, that's going to be gone. That's going to be waterlogged, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like this storm that's coming up that they downgraded to a tropical storm.
Yep.
Let's see what happens when all this warm water in the Gulf kind of goes up into this thing, right? Because that water's warmer than normal. If you're looking at this thing could potentially drop 6 inches of rain per hour.
Yep. You know what it did? It was called Hurricane Agatha. It went, and we told people about this last weekend. It hit. It was a Category 2, the biggest hurricane ever to hit this region in the month of May. Here it is. There it is. Brock's got you the thing. It's come across the Yucatan. It's reforming. Now they're going to call it, if it does become a hurricane, they'll call it Hurricane Alex. But the thing is, Mike, they keep saying, don't worry about it. It's just going to be a tropical storm. I don't know about that. I'm with you. That's warm. That's some really warm water there in the Gulf. This thing could get ugly quick. We got to watch it.
It really is.
Yeah, let's watch it.
It really is. And I don't trust that modeling either, because right when it's at, when it starts getting close to Florida, it's going to hit those warm waters.
Right.
Right above Cuba. And when it hits those warm waters, the whole situation could change. Even if it does not develop winds and things like that. Do you not know this thing can reform when it hits the Atlantic?
Wow. Yeah, and it probably
can actually
will.
Reform.
Yeah, so it's not over till it's over. And
Yeah, they can't count this thing out because the
No.
waters are unstable.
And
the currents are
you
unstable.
said a couple weeks ago when I asked you about, hey, they're saying it's going to be the most dangerous hurricane season ever due to what's called a loop current. You said, oh yeah, and that's because of the heating of the ocean, and that maybe is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and it makes it almost unpredictable, past Paul, because we're going to have some real dangers. We're going to have some real dangers due to this. Some mega, I don't know what they're going to call them, supercanes. That's what I'm calling them, supercanes. We could have supercanes this year. So,
All right, well, everybody stay awake and stay ready and stay prayed up and get ready to go up. And Mike, we're going to let you go until, Lord willing, we'll see you next Thursday night from somewhere in the
Pastor Paul,
world.
I will be here. I'm sorry for being a motor mouth. This happens when I get on your show, Pastor
Well,
Paul.
that's all right.
It happens. It happens.
It's good. It's good.
It happens. Just let me know next time you're going to be on a boat near water. That's all I ask. Let me know. I got to know that time.
I will let you know that because I will end up on a boat near water sometime before this year's over. So I'll let you know. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay, Pastor Paul. God bless you, brother.
Okay. God bless. That's Mike from Around the World, folks. I wonder if he wants to be near, because he saw that vision where I was on a boat telling people you better get in. Time's running out. Maybe Mike is saying, just let me know when you're going to be on a boat near water. We'll keep an eye on that, okay? We might bring that up again next week, just like we might bring up who's in the coffin. You think I forgot about that, right? No, I've got it on my, I got it, okay? Because I know these things he says, and he has said things to me 7 and 8 years ago that now we're talking about. Literally. He said, oh, there's a day coming. I'm like, what? Are you serious? And here we are. But the Bible does that. It tells you what's coming, and then here we are. Here we are. Here's the question, but where are you? God knows where he is. God knows where he is in the prophetic timepiece and the prophetic timeline. But do you know where you are in your place in eternity? Brock, get us a song. Kevin Copley could give us a song if you'd like to use him, or Kevin Wilson, but whichever the Lord lays on your heart. This is the time to come to Jesus. This is the time. Just type, I want to be saved. I want to be saved. And I will pray with you tonight before it's too late.